But Gail, I want to turn the tables on you a bit. You asked the question, but you participated in one of those programs. So as you think about that experience in Enter the Chaos, could you share some of the insights you have, and or what are you still carrying with you from that experience?
Sure. In fact, that's why for this first Witness and Grace program, I so wanted you to be our guest, Nancy, because I wanted to share what I experienced. I was really, really blessed to be a participant in that February workshop of Enter the Chaos. And the timing couldn't have been better. It was before a trip to Israel with my younger sister, with whom
lovely.
And also, it was also with before the course of the pandemic, was just starting to really get serious and getting a lot of attention. So I really wanted to be able to be grounded. And the sessions really did three things for me, and that I still carry with me. And first, and most important, it deepened my appreciation about the importance of contemplative practice. I'll admit that I will describe myself as a contemplative wannabe. I want to do this more regularly. I know it would be good for me to do it. I know I want to get closer to God and feel that divine presence, but I just don't always take the time to do it. And since that workshop, I've actually been scheduling it in my daily to-do list. In my to-do list with all my meetings, I actually include, time for contemplative prayer or practice. And so I've scheduled it in. And for me, midday works well. The mornings are just busy, and I have other prayer practices I do, and I need to get on with my day. But I find that a midday break for me works well because it focuses me and helps me re-energize me for the rest of the day. So that's one of the first things. I also want to say, Nancy, that it also changed my perspective on this. I had always thought about this type of prayer as pretty binary. It was me and the divine presence, and you talk about this. But one of the things I took away from the workshop is that before I enter into that contemplative time, I now take just a moment to think of all the others in the world who may be also entering into this contemplative space or already in at that same time. And that helps me to feel connected on this spiritual plane. So the third thing I'll say is that when I do this practice more regularly, I find that I am more grounded. I'm less reactive because I tend to, respond to things quickly. And that is truly a benefit in this time of such tension and such stress. I find myself yelling at the television a lot. So anyway, I think those are the things that I took away from it.
Well, thank you, Gail. It's always great that when you talk to someone who's done a program, they actually remember some of the things you hope they would remember. So thank you for sharing that. And I do want to pick up on two of them. The last one first. This awareness of being aware of what you're going to do before you do it and not be as reactive, I think is really critical, because that question about transformation you asked a little bit earlier, you're not aware of that happening when you're sitting. It really happens after. That's when you become aware of your own biases or assumptions, worldview, and how that shapes your relationship with God and with the world. And you become aware of your own needs and fears and how that shapes who God is for you. We all come, as I mentioned earlier, sort of with blinders on. And so as we're looking at the world, you look at Black Lives Matter, you look at police, the police brutality or violence. You've got two issues, and we are looking at them from very different worldviews and very different places. We need to become aware of our own personal biases and assumptions before we can engage the other in a conversation that will bring us to a new place of healing. And at some point, after sitting for a while, you really become more vulnerable and willing to act, to let go and allow the divine mystery to work within you. And eventually, you really enter and experience God dwelling within you, and you're aware of your true self. So then you have a different way of seeing, a different way of being and acting. We say sometimes you see with your heart, that your heart becomes an organ of perception. Now, not the emotions here, but it's a different understanding. And you are ready to respond out of Christ consciousness. And then, Gail, you mentioned this idea that you're conscious of other people when you sit. And that just reminded me about that question someone asked about virtual networks. That could you, if you're geographically spread out and pray together, can that be an agent of change? Well, I think that's an important question, and we're still really learning a lot about that. But the more we learn through quantum physics about energy and energy fields and how we truly are all connected, I do believe that when people consciously set the intention, intention, to be open to the divine working within us for the transformation of the world, something shifts. We are really seeding the morphogenetic field of humanity with compassion, equanimity, and love. We really are aligning ourselves with divine mystery, with divine love. We are contributing, I believe, to the next stage of evolutionary consciousness. And I think what quantum physics is giving us a 21st century underpinning for what we always knew as intercessory prayer. That truly, when we pray, there is an effect. And there are lots of studies being done, monitoring the brain during meditation. I know the Dalai Lama has been involved with urging that in many places. The Institute of the Heart Math Organization also is interested in what's the effect of meditation on the person. And then I remember now quite a few years ago, but a whole group of meditators coming out of the TM movement, you might remember Transcendental Meditation,
Right.
wanted to come together, and they came to Washington, DC, maybe about 1,000 of them. And they thought if they could pray for a couple of weeks, a couple times a day, would they affect the rate of the violent crime going on? Now, they were in the same city, but they weren't all in the same physical place in the city. And they did this, and they actually were able to test through some scientific method that the crime rate reduced about 23%.
Interesting.
So I think you're not wasting your time if you sit with others, even virtually. And in fact, ICCD has a virtual contemplative sitting network that you might want to join. We have over 1,000 people in 23 countries who sit for 20 minutes a day with the intention of having God work within us for the transformation of the world. And that'll be in the follow-up as well.
That's great.
That's a little bit about, I think, transformation.
Well, that's terrific. Thank you, Sister Nancy. Very, very helpful. I'm wondering, and one of the things I'm curious about is, again, as a newbie, if you can share some examples in your own life about this, the importance of this practice. I mean, do you ever miss a day? And like,
Oh my.
you do. I mean, what's so different?
Well, I have to say I do. I try not to, but I do. And I try to sit twice a day. But I'll tell you, it's not nice. It's not very nice to see. You could probably ask the 4 other sisters I live with that when on those days, I'm a little bit out of sorts, you know, when I don't take my 20 minutes in the morning or longer. I find myself more irritable. I'm less patient. I start feeling overwhelmed at how my day is shaping up before I even start it. I start feeling worried about things that I don't have to worry about. It's my ego trying to take control, I think. She always is trying to sneak in, you know, and for part of your life, your ego needs to shape you. But at a certain time, your true self needs your ego, but in a very different way. And so I always keep watching that. I sort of lose perspective because my I becomes too important. I don't feel grounded, and I'm not really awake to how my ego is trying to wrest back control. So that may be more than you need to know about my personal stuff, but it isn't very nice.
No, I think it's helpful. It's helpful to know, you know, sometimes the importance of something when you don't do it, you know, and what difference that makes. So no, I think that is helpful.